All right, concert journal number 11, March 14th, 2024, the Let Go tour of 2024 with KMFDM and Cyanotic. We saw them at the Agora in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yep. So once again, we got street parking as a McMoney, so we don't have to pay for parking there. This is one that we had seen them advertising all the way up to it. And usually that's a sign that it didn't sell out. Whatever, that's fine. So parking was actually super easy to get in. There wasn't a lot of competition. But when we got in, something that we saw which we've never seen before, which we know is even a thing, was that the balcony was closed. So everybody had to go down. So general admission gets you a majority of the balcony space, and then obviously then the floor for standing room. And then we saw that, which means now we're standing because it's kind of nice to sit if you're there for a while. So we've never seen that. So this show had such poor attendance that they were able to shut off half the venue, which was surprising. We've never seen that before. So that that wasn't a good first indication of what we thought we were getting ourselves into. Oh, it's going to be busy, but it definitely wasn't. So that was a change in our plans that we realized we'd have to stand the whole time. But it was only 2 bands, thankfully, and not more, so it could be worse. Ticket prices for this. So this was a relatively cheap show. So it was $35 per ticket. And then the fees were $14.20. So almost 50%, 40% markup on the tickets because of the fees. So in total, for the two of us, it was $98.40 to go to the show. So even at that price point, it didn't bring in a lot of people. And I'm thinking that this era of music hasn't aged well with getting new fans. So, I mean, it's industrial metal, circa, early to late 90s, and they still couldn't fill the seats at $35. So there you go. That was a realization upon showing up. So bands, who did we come here to see? Or who did we see?
So the first band that played was Cyanotic, which we had known nothing about, but they're an electronic bass industrial band from Chicago. And on their Bandcamp, how they described themselves was part band, part machine, Chicago-based angry robot outfit. Whatever that means.
Yeah. Again, if you need to describe your music, unless you're a huge band like Iron Maiden or something, seems kind of like a Nine Inch Nails thing where Trent Reznor, and then he has kind of a collection of musicians that perform with them, and this is kind of the same thing for that. So what was our impression of their performance? Well, why don't you give yours?
So I thought their music was okay, but they did not do a good job live. They were all just sort of standing there, playing their music. They didn't have no crowd interaction. But the worst part was they sounded terrible. The sound did not fill the space. It just sounded muddy and does not sound good.
Yeah, it was almost quiet. He was talking and it was like he was in the room next door. It was very muffled. Everything about their performance was muffled. It sounded horrible. It was like a very amateur hour. I'm doing a concert in your garage, and it was trash. So, and I am not a fan of, I guess I probably knew this before, but it was a reminder, I'm not a fan of electronic industrial music, because again, it was a bunch of guys, I'll say a bunch of guys, but several people standing in front of, a keyboard or some sort of electronic musical input device, and they're just standing there, and you don't see them, but they're just moving their hands, and they're looking down at their hands doing this. Wow. I mean, I'm really engaged with all that stuff. So that was weird. And then they're dressed too, again, they were just random jeans and t-shirts. I don't know, I guess I never really paid attention to that, but I kind of want them to have a look. There's something about you that separates you from the people in the audience. What does Cyanotic look like as an individual, as a group? And it was like, it looked like a high school talent show. Like that was really what it came across as. And the production value was very much high school talent show. So that was, I was like within 2 to 3 songs, I'm like, I'm out. This is one of the worst bands I've ever seen live. It was awful. Now the one thing that was interesting, I guess, was that, you know, they had a TV screen or a projection screen where they were showing clips. And what 2 movies did they show clips from?
They first showed clips of Aliens and then showed clips of Terminator.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, maybe if you can understand what they're saying, then maybe it connects to the movie or something. I don't know.
Probably not. So yeah, the Aliens clip, which I did get a little bit of a video of, I think, is basically it's actually from a deleted scene with the sentry guns where the numbers are counting down. So being a fan of that movie, I'm like, oh hey, I recognize that. Okay, I mean, I don't know, that really didn't improve my thoughts on the whole concert, but it was an interesting tidbit. So we were down on the floor because we had to be, because everything else was shut down. And then you went into the pit for the last 2 songs, right?
Yeah, because I just kept moving forward, and then I ended up behind these 2 girls, and then they went to the right to the pit, and I was like, guess I'll go with you, and then I jumped in for the last song.
So this is your first official mosh pit, and it was for this band.
Yes. Like I said, I'm just going to say KMFDM.
Yeah, just ignore
this didn't happen.
This did not happen at all. Okay, and one last thought then with Cyanotic, not to like drone on about this band, but like their sound was so muddied between the guitars. Like you see them playing, I can't pick it up in the mix. There was a drumming background, but then there's a guy with electronic drum beat, and he seemed to be, you know, there would be 1,000 drum beats, and he'd be just doing a couple things, which whatever. But I honestly thought, as I was thinking this, I thought that if one of those guys stopped playing, I guarantee you that you could not tell, because you'd lose it in the mix. And like literally as I'm thinking that, the keyboardist, his keyboard tumbled onto the floor. And guess what? It didn't improve or worsen the music at all. Like you couldn't even tell that this guy stopped playing.
And I could tell because I was not paying attention. And then I look up and I see him picking his keyboard up, and I was like, didn't know that happened.
Yeah, exactly. So then he had to pick it up, and then he started playing again. And I'm like, was this a case of Milli Vanilli where they were playing it and then they just hired some people to stand there and do that? Anyway, so that was kind of the parting thought on Cyanotic. So, all right. So after Cyanotic was
KMFDM, which they're another industrial metal band, but they're more like metal focused, I guess. They're more focused like the guitars and the drums.
Yeah.
And they were great. Like the drummer was in this big like sort of like box thing that had a bunch of like LED lights in it. Each singer had their own little stand that they sang at.
Yeah. So the one thing that was a little bit interesting was, you know, normally like you go to these shows and have these huge backdrops of their band name. I mean, that's really what is behind them. And KMFDM has almost this comically small banner that's hanging way up at the top. But then you realize when they start performing, like, that has little to do with it. They are a light show band. It was so much light, to be honest, you couldn't even see that backdrop once all of the lights are flashing. But, I mean, it was still kind of almost comical, like how small this thing is and just kind of hanging at the top there. So, but anyway, so we're on the floor. I'm a lot more familiar with KMFDM. I've seen KMFDM before. Back in the 90s. So you were in the pit for the whole thing, or the mosh pit for the whole thing.
Yeah, most of the songs. I pick and chose my songs because that's tiring.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the experience of what I had going in, where there's always some shirtless dude. There's always someone who's way too aggressive. And it sounds like you experienced all of those.
Yeah, we checked all the boxes. There was multiple shirtless people, one guy who's like elbowing people like this. So I got the whole experience.
Yeah, so mosh pits haven't changed in 30 years. And this is why, as an old person, I'm like, I'll stand out of this. I'm perfectly fine with that. So I'm glad you got to experience that for this band. So just to rate the bands, I know it's pretty easy what we were going to choose for this one. But so the first band, Cyanotic.
Red, They were not good live. I did not really like them.
Yeah, Red, solid Red. I mean, everything about it was horrible. I do not want to see that band ever again. They're up there with Snafu. This is. And then KMFDM.
Green, they were fun live. I hope to see them again.
Yeah, this is solid Green. This band has been around for so long that their catalog has gotten so big. It was actually surprising how many of their, what I would call their hits, which were their hits, were not played during this show. There was a couple, but so many of the old ones. I mean, KMFDM Sucks was played, but actually they walked out to that song. They walked out to their own song playing over the speaker, which that's got to be a first. I've never seen a band do that. Like, hey, it's KMFDM Sucks. That they cut it off and then they launched into the first song. That was really weird.
Yeah, and also down there, because they didn't play Juke Joint Jezebel, and the whole time there's this one guy just screaming, Juke Joint! Juke Joint! The whole show.
Yeah, well, whatever. You can't please everybody. So anyway, that was great. So solid Green from them. Okay, so merch. So we did our merch shopping when we first got there. We got there basically as the doors opened, which was nice. Went in quick because thunderstorms were threatening, so we didn't want to get trapped outside. So what was the merch like?
So their KMFDM selection was pretty small, but they just had a few like shirts, couple hoodies. But the one thing was the shirts only went from like size medium to like XL.
Yeah.
Which was a weird choice, but I don't know, I guess to save money or something.
Yeah, they probably don't sell a lot of smalls and 2X, but I usually get a 2X because I'm an XL person. And then you buy the 2X and then it shrinks slightly. And then you're perfect line. Because like this shirt, I mean, the Lamb of God shirt, like it fits, it's like a little bit short, but it's a 2X and it's just slightly shrinking. So we end up having to get the XLs for that. So, and there wasn't any other stuff, like there weren't like patches. They did sell a CD.
But it was only signed for like $30, and we're like, we can get it somewhere else.
Yeah, like they weren't even selling just the CD. You had to buy the signed one. And then they had a $200 megaphone, stage used, as they were very clear about in their little advertisement. So $200, you get a stage used, signed megaphone from KMFDM.
That they used for like one song.
Use it for one song, yeah. And I don't think it sold.
Probably not.
So a little bit of a mixed bag. And they only had one concert shirt, tour shirt. Everything else was basically just generic black shirts with different singles or album covers on the front. Whatever, we were able to get a concert shirt for it. Cyanotic actually had a pretty good selection of stuff. They had LPs and CDs and shirts, but none of the prices were listed.
Yeah.
And you had, like the woman running the stand, she had a piece of paper with the pricing on it. So like she would show you what they were. I don't know. That was weird. And their band was actually hanging out. As we learned, I didn't know who they were, but then you got to the performance. I'm like, oh, hey, those are the guys that were standing next to the merch stand. So they were standing out there. So what did we end up getting then, which we kind of alluded to already?
We both got the same Let Go tour shirt that had the album artwork.
Album artwork and then the tour dates on the back. And the great thing about it, cheap, $35, which this is like the lowest price that we'll ever see at shows like this. So $35, I'm willing to buy in pretty easily on that. So I'm glad to have something that we liked. And then also kind of add into the merch. So because I had seen the band in the early 90s, I wore my original Juke Joint Jezebel shirt with Kraut on the back at this show. That was a fun opportunity, right? To see a band 30 years later and then wear the same concert shirt. Now I feel like you go back and see like Sabbath back in the day, and then I was the young kid, and then these old farts wearing like, well, here is my original Sabbath concert shirt from Paranoid or whatever, and now I'm that guy doing the same exact thing. So they sell this shirt now, but mine is purple. The new one I think is like red, but it still says Kraut in the back. But I got an original one, so an opportunity to wear them. I'm glad it actually held up after all these years. All right, so first for this concert.
For me, it's first for both bands and first time being in the pit.
Yeah, a true mosh pit. I have some video of you, your head bouncing around in that, so we have proof that you made it in there. You came out, you weren't bruised, you know, you weren't cut. It's just definitely not be able to get knocked down and into the floor full of beer and who knows what else that was in there. So yeah, so that was some great firsts with that. So the overall review. So we'll briefly go through the venue, the Cleveland Agora, which we've been to now quite a few times.
Green.
No problems there. They were selling their merch again. Still didn't buy it because, again, like I don't want to tack on another $30-$40. But anyway, so that was nice. Speaking of merch, so then how would you rate the merch?
Red. There was like one good shirt, no patches. None of it really felt unique to the concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was not a fan.
I'm only going to give it a yellow because of the price. $35 is a great price for sure. Because I feel like, I mean, you go out to any store now and any shirt's $35. So really, I'm getting it at that price. But I agree. Like there wasn't a patch. Like I want something that I can use of just a CD that's not signed. Or I guess if I had the CD and I had the signing with the band, then that would be a better memento than just buying something that's pre-signed. So that's fine. Then value. So I'll speak to the value of this. So the tickets for this roughly, well, I'll say roughly, so were $98.40. So $100 for tickets to get in for two bands. That value, it was pretty good. The opener was stronger. I would have felt better about that in hindsight. I didn't know that going in. But KMFDM was such a strong performance, it easily made up for it. So the $35 price point, I'm a little surprised, like I said, that more people weren't into this. Like the crowd, there was no young people. You were like the only young person. Everybody was people that had seen this band in the 90s and early 2000s watching them, which is probably why they can't sell more tickets because they don't have a young audience or younger audience with that. So it was a good value between that and then the merch, which was $70 for our two shirts. But they need a smaller venue, unfortunately, which limits where they can go because there aren't a ton of small venues. You know, that hierarchy of where we're at in the Agora is kind of like the smallest big venue. And then after that, it starts getting pretty small. So we'll see where that goes. Okay, and finally, the overall concert experience.
Green. It was fun. I hope to see KMFDM again, hopefully with like maybe a little bit better opening band, but still fun.
Yeah, it was a great show. It was really high energy during their performance. I mean, the fact that it was so poorly attended, like the floor, while it was full, was not crowded. So you were easily able to stand, pick a spot, and I didn't feel like it was anybody's way. If you wanted to get to the front or get into the mosh pit, you easily could. You could easily get out. So we've been to other shows where that's not the case. It's horrible. That this part was very nice. Disappointing that we couldn't grab a seat, like Cyanotic would have just grabbed the seat for that whole thing. But yeah, it was a green only because of KMFDM's performance with that. So, but overall, yeah, it was great. Hopefully we can see them again. I don't know how often they tour. Maybe it's only with albums, but we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. All right, so that concludes this concert journal. So thanks for watching.